Hi all, this is the second video of how to create a chatbot in Python. If you haven't looked at my first video, take a look here. In the previous video, we had learned how to create a basic AI chatbot. And in this video, we're going to learn how to make it even more user-friendly by putting a user interface or a UI around it. For the UI, we are going to use a library called Gradio, available at gradio.app. Gradio allows us to create the prototype of a chatbot so you can share with your boss, with your colleagues, your friends and family and get their feedback. Let's install Gradio. Then we'll continue with the previous code, copy the previous code into a new file. Since I'll first demo Gradio API, we're going to comment the existing code so we don't mess around with that. Then we'll import Gradio. To use Gradio, we're going to use the interface class. This interface class can wrap any Python function with a UI around it. The interface class has three required parameters. One is a function which wraps the UI around it. Input, which is the component that is required for the input. It could be a text, image, or audio. Output, which could be a text, image, or audio. Now let's define the hello user function that takes in the username and prints this output. And finally, we will launch the demo. We'll run this program. When we run this program, Gradio will create a local server which is accessible at this URL. We'll go to that URL. You could see the UI has two fields. One is the username and one is the output. Let's input the username. And there you go. This is the same message that our function returned. Now, although Gradio allows other inputs like checkboxes, sliders, but we are not going to go into that today. However, we're going to use the chat interface class that Gradio has to build the chatbot. To build a chatbot, we're going to first remove the original code. We're going to use the chat interface class. The chat interface class takes in a function, and the function should have two parameters. One is the message and one is the history. The message is the string that represents the user's message, and history is the message history that we talked about in the previous lesson. This function should return a string, but right now we are using a static string to get started. Later on, we're going to build on this. Now let's launch the demo. Let's go to the URL. So there you go. Now it has a new interface called the chat interface. Let's use the example from the previous video. As you can see, this is the static response that our function returns. So now that we've tried a simple example, let's make the real chatbot. Uncomment the code that we had commented before, and we're going to basically move it a little bit to the end. Now we don't need the while loop. And what we're going to do is we are going to wrap the original message that was in the while loop in this function. Now we don't need this because we already have the message object. And the user message, we will use this message object. Message history remains the same. We don't need this. Don't need this. The chat completion line remains the same. We don't need to print this. The parsing of the message choices and everything else remains exactly the same. We don't need this. Now, instead of returning, this is a static response, we are going to replace this with the content, which is the actual message that is returned by the ChatGPT. Let's try to run this. Let's go to the URL. And now let's try a favorite example. There you go. ChatGPT has returned the 20 dog names that we were waiting for. Let's try to do a follow-up. Ta-da! You have more names. Let's try to do one more follow-up. Yay! Now we got the female dog names. So there you go, folks. We have built a UI for the chatbot we had built before using the Gradio library. How do you share with your family, friends, boss? That's the topic of my next video. I'll also teach you how to embed this chatbot on your own website. If you like this video, press like, subscribe, and press the bell icon. Until next time, goodbye.